Greetings to you all and welcome to the program Nguoi, Viet, Man and His Work. I am your host, Ding Sinh Long. Today we will have an interview with Professor Quyen Quang Tran and introduce you to his book entitled Physiognomy, The Art of Reading People. Mr. Quyen started his career as a high school math teacher in Saigon, before working as an expert with the Social and Economic Council and later as a professor of corporate finance at the Political and Business School of Dalat University. Thereafter, Professor Nguyen became a member of the Advisory Committee for the National Economic Development Fund. In 1974, Mr. Nguyen went to the United States for a postgraduate program in agro-industrial project development and management, and in 1975 he became a financial expert at the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group, where he worked for 25 years. Presently, Mr. Nguyen is retired and he devotes much of his time to philanthropic and social activities. Professor Quyen is well known as a physiognomist with decades of experience in this field, and now he is the author of two fascinating books on physiognomy, namely Tuong Phap Dien in Vietnamese, published in 2011, and Physiognomy, The Art of Reading People, an expanded English version published in 2016 by Amazon. These books are the result of decades of careful research and meticulous analysis of physiognomy, and to our knowledge, they have been warmly received by their readers. There have been many interviews with the author in newspapers, radio, and television shows in which he has explained the contents and characteristics of his books with clarity and provided answers to countless questions about human destiny. However, there remains one important question that we would like to explore today. Is there a relationship between the physiognomy of a top national leader and the fate of his country? To find out, let's start the interview with Professor Quyen. Mr. Quyen, welcome to my program. I'd like to start with a question about Mr. Dien. Before 1975, Mr. Dien was highly reputed as a gifted physiognomist all over Vietnam. Can you please tell us more about him and about his life?
He was born in 1905 in Nguyen, in North Vietnam, and passed away in 1974 in Saigon. He was an easygoing person in many aspects of his life. He always wore a light brown shirt, gray pants, and a pair of brown sandals, and a brown bag under his armpits to carry some of his everyday items, including a notebook to jot down his appointments. Most of the people around him were close friends and family members. He loved children and animals, and loved to devote time nurturing trees. He was always there for his friends, no matter the time of day or night. He treated everybody equally, without making any distinction for their age or social class. If he addressed a minister as sir, he would do the same to the minister's driver.
I learned that he was called by many very special names in recognition of his famous predictions, such as those he made for famous or powerful personalities.
He came to be called by such honorifics as Divine Master or Angel. However, he always asked people not to give him names relating to divinity, since he said they belong only to those in heaven. To him, being treated as a gifted person already made him feel extremely lucky.
You learned physiognomy reading from Mr. Dien over a period of 9 years and have been practicing it for over 45 years. Now you have put all your knowledge into these books, the Vietnamese version of 300 pages and the English version of 600 pages, which are filled with rich and enlightening insights. The two books are divided into 14 chapters that address every aspect of physiognomy from the fundamentals to advanced concepts. My first questions to you are, first, can we rely on physiognomy? Second, is it something mystical or superstitious? And let's assume that it can be proven scientifically in a convincing way. Then third, what is it used for?
Physiognomy is a collection of popular beliefs and insights that have been established by experience over many generations. They are collected, analyzed, and categorized into an experimental science by the physiognomist. The science by itself is not right or wrong. What is critical is whether the person who applies it in reading people does it scientifically, and if he or she shares the predictions in a kind and professional manner. Physiognomy resembles any other experimental science in that it requires the collection of all necessary data, followed by a systematic, thorough, and accurate analysis in order to reach a valuable conclusion.
Is it possible to predict the fate of a nation from the physiognomy of its leaders? For example, according to your books, Mr. Dien described General Dung Van Minh of South Vietnam as incompetent, incapable of saving the country, good for nothing, and useless. Can you tell us a bit more about this in terms of his physiognomy?
Let me offer you an analogy. Looking at the children in a family, one can have a good idea about their parents and vice versa. Similarly, looking at the people of a country, one can make a deduction about the leaders and vice versa. General Dung Van Minh has a flaccid, meaty face which indicates that he is incompetent and that he can be easily bribed with money or a powerful position. Also, his blubbery upper lip, which protrude over the lower one, indicates that he is a pretentious person and cannot be trusted with his words.
Thank you for your explanations, which should provide our audience with an opportunity to contemplate on Ngo Hung Dien's conclusions in this case and how they relate to past events. How about President Nguyen Van Thieu of the Republic of Vietnam? Rumor has it that he invited Mr. Dien to act as his advisor. Can you tell us more about this?
The word contemplate that you mentioned is very important for readers who have acquired knowledge about physiognomy via the two books. Indeed, I suggest that all readers of these two books do their own study and research on them to obtain their own answers through direct experience and then contemplate about what is happening and why. Mr. Dien was never an advisor to President Quyen Quang Tran. After he had refused several invitations from President Thieu to come over the president's palace, Mr. Dien finally agreed to go to see President Thieu and his family after I shared with him my view that while we could probably not do anything for him personally, we could offer him some suggestions to ensure some security for the people and reduce their suffering. President Thieu treated Mr. Dien with utmost respect and gratitude. At each of Mr. Dien's visits, President Thieu always had his wife and children greet him, calling him Grandpa. Mr. Dien did not reveal any of his predictions for President Thieu to anybody because they were confidential. However, I am aware that during the 6 to 7 years of visits by Mr. Dien to the palace, President Thieu never asked Mr. Dien for any advice related to his presidency. President Thieu no doubt trusted that Mr. Dien would have given him advice if there would have been anything harmful to him or to his family, given their close relationship.
Since President Thieu never asked Mr. Dien for any advice on his presidency, we can say that Mr. Dien was not an advisor to President Thieu. Let's look at Stalin. Can you tell us about his physiognomy and his repressive regime in the Soviet Union?
Before getting there, I would like to talk about Henry Kissinger's physiognomy, if you don't mind. Mrs. Dien explained to me that Mr. Kissinger was a clever strategist, giving his forehead in the shape of a chain of mountains. In addition, his extremely curly hair also made him very stubborn. It was not easy to change his mind. For that reason, it did not matter who the leader of South Vietnam was, as that person would not have been able to change Vietnam's fate once it was in Kissinger's hand. Mrs. Dien gave an analogy, describing Mr. Kissinger like a landlord who demands a renter to pay up his late rent. The renter explains that he is in short of money and mentions that his father used to help out Mr. Kissinger's father a lot in the past, including helping him to get his doctorate. Mr. Kissinger would voice his thanks, but before leaving, he would still tell the renter that if the rent is not paid by the next day, the renter's belonging will be thrown out of the place. He only thinks of his own interests and would not take Vietnam's interests into consideration. This attitude indeed describes what happens during the negotiation with North Vietnam in 1972 in Paris.
His attitude probably reflected the United States' policy on Vietnam at the time.
Yes, President Thieu should not be blamed for the loss of South Vietnam. It was decided by the United States and by Mr. Kissinger. Now let's talk about Stalin. He is the first leader in the world to be so merciless. His standing up hair indicates a person who can commit cruel, murderous, bloody acts. His square face indicates a president and a stubborn person. His compressed like flesh, which is hard like plywood or iron, makes him heartless and capable of massacring millions of people without blinking an eye, irrespective of whether one is his friend or enemy.
That has been proven fully by history. What about Mr. Gorbachev, who made the whole regime change around?
Mr. Gorbachev has a round face with limpid skin, which made him a soft and sensitive person. The birthmark on his forehead is like a cloud covering the sky, which predicts a dead end in his future. It explains his loss of power due to his kind heart, which, on the other hand, also made him a hero for humanity.
However, it seems that he did not benefit from it, and he is in fact being forgotten by humanity.
History will give him the place he deserves later on.
I would say that Putin is the one who really benefited from it.
Putin is a frighteningly shrewd politician. The eyes buried deeply under the eyebrows indicates that he invests years in planning his actions, which allows him to consistently defeat his opponents. His slow and controlled eyes and silhouette render him enigmatic, capable of finding solutions for the most intricate problems. In South Vietnam, General and Prime Minister Dien Kim had a similar physiognomy which, added to his numbling features, gave him strong capabilities in the area of intelligence. Mr. Putin also has an intelligence background, and he is to be feared.
Let's leave Russia to talk about the United States. What do you think about President Kennedy, who was murdered tragically in 1963?
The Kennedy family have been haunted by a blood debt, or some other kind of debt over generations that leads to a disgrace or a sudden premature death for any member who becomes or has the potential to become a famous national leader. About 30 years ago, I wrote about this to Senator Ted Kennedy to offer some solutions to this challenge. I just received a thank you letter in return. In physiognomy, concave temples like President Kennedy's bring about a failure or death when one opts for a combative path in one's life. Moreover, his partner, Vice President Johnson, had a powerful forehead and other dominant features, and the universal law would naturally eliminate the person with weaker features.
In your books, you highlight that a woman's physiognomy has an important impact on her husband's success. Is that what explains President Kennedy's fate?
While Jacqueline Kennedy possessed a beautiful forehead that allowed her to enjoy some fame, her thin head and body meant her fame would be short-lived. These features explain why her husband, Mr. Kennedy, died not too long after he became president. His case is not unique. As I stated in the books, it is an undeniable truth that a man absolutely needs the support of a woman to achieve national or global renowned success. Let's take the example of President Reagan. He did not have all the necessary features to become president, but happened all the same thanks to the First Lady Nancy Reagan, who had a feature of a noble, amphibious white bird, which allowed him to become an immortalized president. President Bush's father, vice president under Reagan presidency, was a flexible person who was only fit to work in diplomacy, intelligence, or business. Thanks to First Lady Barbara Bush, who had a noble appearance with 5 short features, a solid mountain-like gait, and a square forehead, he became president even though he was not meant to be president, based on his own physiognomy features.
What about President Obama and Michelle Obama?
President Obama is more like an actor. He is not as earnest about the presidency as the others, due to the thin upper part of his ears, which makes him see life as a show. He fulfills his role as a presidency as if he is playing a character in a show. When the curtain falls, everything is over. In his second term, he runs a high risk of facing difficult situations, and these could even threaten his life were it not for Michelle Obama. Her bell-shaped appearance would help whoever married her attain a significant career position. However, the same person would face a harmful or even fatal accident if there were to be a rupture in their relationship be it official or not.
I would like to turn to Asia now. Can you tell me about Xi Jinping, the president and chairman of the Communist Party of China?
Xi Jinping's physiognomy resembles that of a lion, as did Mao Zedong. His accomplishment would not be any less than Chairman Mao's, and may even be greater. However, he will encounter lots of dangerous situations on his path. His meaty square cheeks make him extremely determined and immovable in his decisions. This constitutes a double-edged sword. His decisions will either lead to tremendous success or to terrible defeat, and there is no chance for turning back. It is advisable for him to use mercy rather than power to govern. Using power will create lots of ferocious competitors who will arise from anywhere. However, his rough, short forehead, which is similar to President Kennedy's, does not allow him to reap the benefits of his actions, so there is no guarantee that he will come out a winner. On the other hand, choosing virtue over sowing misery will help him conquer not only his people's heart, but also the support of neighboring countries, which will offer submission to him willingly rather than under duress.
It seems that Xi Jinping is using the image of Mao Zedong to consolidate his power.
Small and long eyes like his indicates dishonesty in an ordinary person, but in a leader, especially in China, they point to a visionary character. He is able to see into the future of China as far as 100 years from now, but he will not repeat Mao Zedong's needless massacres. He only kills with a clear purpose.
Does that explain his conciliatory approach with the United States to allow him to work on the internal problems of China?
It's possible. I notice a particular feature in him. He smiles with his mouth and not with his eyes. Usually people smile or laugh with both their eyes and their mouth. In his case, even smiling, he still observes and watches others for any bad play, and never lets down his guard even in his best moments.
It sounds like he is fearless.
Yes.
Rumors have it that there will be internal disturbances and that Xi Jinping will crack down ruthlessly on the opposition.
It comes from his square cheeks and strong chin.
Vietnam is greatly influenced by China's dominating policy. Do the physiognomy features of the government leaders of the Vietnamese Communist Party, for instance, General Secretary Nguyen, President Truong Tân Sang, or Prime Minister Nguyen Tân Dũng, tell us whether they are of the caliber to deal with China, or will the fate of Vietnam darken?
Mr. Nguyen Phu Trong has the appearance of a village-level Confucian teacher who only repeats over and over that human nature is not of itself vicious, and he cannot go beyond that.
And Mr. Truong Tân Sang?
In physiognomy, one has to look at 4 domains in order to read a person. The first is the physical form. Is it strong or weak, tall or short, round or square? Second comes the sound, which represents the inner energy. For example, does a person with a lion's-like appearance sound like a cricket, or vice versa? The third domain is the color, which predicts whether good or bad events are likely to happen in the near future, or whether a good or bad situation still prevails or not. The last and most important is the countenance. For example, a military general with a strong countenance will find his soldier brimming with bravery. A general with weak countenance, whose voice drops away as soon as he talks, will lower his soldiers' spirits and make them feel like losers even before going into the battlefield. Let's apply the above principles to Mr. Truong Tân Sang physiognomy. His square physical form is a good sign. However, his color appears like that of a person stricken by a fatal illness. I cannot comment on his sound because I have never heard him talk. In terms of his countenance, the answer is obvious when we see him beside Xi Jinping.
Any hope with Prime Minister Nguyen Tân Dũng?
Mr. Nguyen Tân Dũng is a very capable person. His eyes reflect power, and his large forehead reflects intelligence. He needs competent assistance in order to achieve great success. However, in the tripod of Tuong, Sang, and Dung, 2 out of the 3 legs are already broken, so the third leg cannot achieve much because it lacks support. They don't even know what to do among themselves, never mind with what to do with China or other countries. That explains Vietnam's lack of clear political strategies at this time, because these 3 do not fit well together. Mr. Tuong Dung has the ability to deal face-to-face with others, but since his support is weak, his approach will be mainly to avoid problems.
Does that lead to a dimmer outlook for the fate of Vietnam?
No doubt, the parents' physiognomy can tell about the children's success and vice versa. The same applies to a country's leader and its citizens. Vietnamese women are being sold to Taiwan, Korea, and other countries as exploited laborers because of the lack of good leadership.
Is there not a way for Vietnam to get out of this misery?
In the past, Mrs. Dien and I came to the conclusion that Vietnam is a shrine, geographically speaking. But the country was hit by a B-52 bombers, which released considerable negative energies that will take some time before they settle down and Vietnam can recover in peace and wealth. I have been back to Vietnam 3 times on work-related travel for the World Bank. In order to find out whether Vietnam has a basis for us to look forward to better days, I visited several schools. In general, the physiognomy of Vietnam's adult is not much to be proud of, with their bony face and bad features mouth. A civilized person has a nice featured mouth, while a non-civilized person's mouth resembles a muzzle. However, the school children's features look promising. Their forehead predicts a fortunate life, and their eyes indicates virtuous conduct. Their ears point to contentment, and their gait signals power. Those children constitute the elite who will take charge of leading the country. At the time, they were teenagers, and soon they will become solid pillars for the prosperity of Vietnam when they reach their late 40s and early 50s. Therefore, Vietnam will have long-lasting years of peaceful governance in the very near future.
When do you think that will happen?
About 50 years after unification, which was in 1975, therefore in the very next decade or so.
In the past, Vietnam was colonized by China for 1,000 years, but the Vietnamese were still able to fight their way out of it. In the same vein, is the present problem only temporary?
Yes. Once the harmful consequences of the B-52 bombers are resolved, the country's capable people will start to emerge like the new healthy plants.
Let's hope that Vietnam will have new elite leaders soon.
The good seeds are all there, so it's only a matter of time.
Thank you, Professor Quyen Quang Tran, for sharing your views with us in this very interesting conversation.
Thank you to you, Mr. Ding Sinh Long.
Dear audience, Professor Quyen Quang Tran has shared fascinating and highly useful information with us, derived from physiognomy readings based on the teachings of Mr. Nguoi Dien. We can wait and see to validate this relationship between one's physiognomy, especially the leaders, and the fate of a collective country. To end the interview, I'd like to quote the writer Sơn Tùng remark on the Viet Thuc Forum website. With his book, Physiognomy, the Art of Reading People, the author Quyen Quang Tran has introduced to the readers the art of reading people in a scientific way. From developing observation and analysis skills to the application of physiognomy laws. These are like keys that open the door to a domain that is usually perceived as mystical, namely human destiny. The author has donated all the proceeds from selling these books to the charitable organization Friends of the Blind, which she founded in 2003. As of the end of 2015, the association had allowed over 2,000 people with vision problems to have eye surgery and thereby restore their eyesight. If you are interested in buying the book, it is available on Amazon's websites. I'd like to end the program Nguoi vào việc here. I am Ding Sinh Long. Thank you for watching us.